Welcome back to the Double Leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Jai Picks, the other half of the show, The Parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC Charlotte coming off the pay-per-view card of UFC 288. How we feeling? Moving into UFC Charlotte?
Oh, ready to move past UFC 288. Jump into another. We were just talking. It's a good little card here. A lot of close fights, which is going to make it interesting on the betting odds and trying to choose sides and picking your spots. But I see violence written a lot all over some of these fights on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. 12 fights in total. We lost the Mackenzie Dern Angela Hill fight, which is now moved to May 20th. Will be the main event because Aldana and Pennington got moved because Aldana's stepping in to fight Amanda Nunes. So we're down to 12 fights, but the main card, some pretty solid fights. For the main card of a fight night, uh, I'm I'm pleased with it, and I'm excited to go through it. So without any further ado, we will get into it. If you want to get in our premium membership, the link will be in the description below. We're going to give our picks throughout the show, but obviously those are early in the week, and the bets are never usually the same. Sometimes they are, but very rare. So get in on that. But we'll start with the main event. A heavyweight bout here. A lot of hype for Jilton Almeida coming in at minus 440. Jairzinho Rozenstruik coming in at plus 440 over under 1.5 rounds, plus 188 for the over, minus 188 for the under. So they are expecting a quick fight. This one's scheduled for 5 rounds, main event, but I don't think it'll last that long. As always, odds are courtesy of BetOpenly, peer to peer, no house, so you're only paying 1% juice. That's why you can get the prices like these. 5-0 for Jilton Almeida, undefeated in the UFC. Jairzinho Rozenstruik been on a bit of a couple of tough losses, and then coming off the win to Chris Daukaus, 23-second knockout win back in December at UFC 282. We all know the deal with Jairzinho. Man's got the death touch. I mean, he's got power for days, but super low volume. But if he hits you, like, you're gonna feel it. And Jilton Almeida loves to get it to the ground. He's very athletic, very strong, very good grappler. So, I mean, you can understand why the line is like that because Jilton Almeida has been so dominant. But do you see any value on the dog?
Yeah, I wanted to just because of the striking of Jairzinho, but I mean, you look at who Jairzinho's fighting, and he's not really beating any grappler or wrestlers. I mean, he beat Chris Daukaus in his last fight by knockout, but before that, Alexander Volkov, Curtis Blades, he lost to, which we all know Curtis Blades is one of the best wrestlers at heavyweight. But as far as explosiveness and actually getting in on the legs to get a takedown, Jailton Almeida is 10 times as fast as Curtis Blades, in my opinion. So that's a huge red flag for me there. I mean, if Jairzinho is going to win this fight, he's got to catch him early. If he doesn't catch him, he's just going to get taken down, time after time, controlled. I don't see Jairzinho being able to really work back to his feet as well. Jailton Almeida is just a beast, man, and he's so athletic and he's strong. And you have to think that if this fight does go past the first round, Jailton Almeida is still going to be the one with the better gas tank compared to, like, when you look at both of these guys' past fights. Because Jailton Almeida, man, he's quickly racked up 4 wins in the UFC. Competition's going to start getting a little better, starting with Jairzinho, but I think it's more of the same what we've seen from him. I mean, he's probably going to shoot for a takedown right away. Why even mess with the striking on the feet, in my opinion? So yeah, once he gets into the ground, I think Jailton's just going to work into a dominant position, fish for submissions, and eventually I could see him get in the back, flatten him out, either TKO or sinks in that rear naked choke. But I'm not taking a chance on the on Jairzinho's side here. I can't fade Jailton Almeida yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to take that, you're basically taking a puncher's chance, which at heavyweight, and you're getting Jairzinho's type of power is not a terrible bet. At plus 440, that's pretty good for a money line price. But in all reality, like, Almeida's gonna get to the ground. I mean, he's super explosive with his takedowns. He averages 6.73 per 15 minutes, and I mean he just gets them. Like, he just throws that front kick up the middle or the snap kick up the middle. gets you backing up, gets your hands up, and then shoots the blast double, and you really can't do anything about it. I mean, some guys, or in his last fight against Shamil Abdurakhimov, he tried to hit him with that right hand right away because he knew it was coming, and he hit Jelton with that right hand, but Jelton's got a pretty solid chin on him, and I think, like you said, he's probably gonna have the better cardio, even if it does go into the second round. I think he'll be able to keep the pace going on the ground. Jairzinho's not really gonna be wanting to be on the ground, and he'll probably start to fold as the fight goes on. But I do think Jairzinho could probably survive a round, maybe go into round two, late into round two, maybe even a third round. But I don't know, man. It's a puncher's chance at that, and like maybe you got to land a knee or something, and you're gonna have to time that perfectly. Jelton's so fast, like he's probably better suited for light heavyweight, but maybe he just sees a better path to the title at heavyweight because he has kind of putting on some pounds. He was kind of floating around light heavyweight and flirting with that idea, and now he's kind of like, all right, I'm gonna be a heavyweight, and he's bulked up. Dude's shredded too, so he's
Yeah,
fast.
and
He's gonna get it to the ground, and I'm taking.
yeah, yeah. And if Jairzinho does survive that first round, after that point, every takedown is just going to take that much more out of the gas tank of Jairzinho, in my opinion. It's going to be harder to get up. But once you do get up, you're constantly going to be thinking about that next takedown. So how do you even get your striking going? I just see it being that type of fight. And but I think if you do see a little adversity that Jailton Almeida has to overcome, you know, it's going to be in that first round. So if you are betting on Jairzinho, I think you just have to take first round finish. You don't even mess with the money line. Get a few more, get a little bit better odds for yourself, because if it gets past the first, I don't see Jairzinho having enough in the tank to put the lights out after that first round.
Yeah, I mean he's got in some insane power. I mean we've seen him knock out guys with like barely touching him, so could catch him with something coming in. But that's really all you got. Like that's your hope. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll take Almeida, as most people will this weekend. Light heavyweight bout: Anthony Smith and Johnny Walker sitting at even odds, both sides. Over under 1.5 rounds, plus 133 for the over, minus 133 for the under. I'm interested to see how this one plays out because, Johnny Walker came into the UFC with a good amount of hype, and he's got a frame like no other. 6'6". He's had a couple losses and then a win and then a couple more losses and then a couple big wins his past couple times out against Paul Craig and Iwan Kutalaba, who aren't on the hottest streaks, but he got a couple first-round finishes. So things are looking upwards for Johnny Walker. As for Anthony Smith, he's now 34. He's got a plethora of fights under his record, maybe a little set up a little bit more to get out of the UFC. I know he does work for the UFC or ESPN, one of them, and he does the YouTube stuff with Bisping. So I mean, he's got other things that he's working on as well. Coming into this one, I lean Johnny Walker just for the explosiveness, and I just think the potential, like his ceiling's a lot higher compared to Anthony Smith at this point. We already know what Anthony Smith is going to be. I don't think he's got a ton to fight for here. I mean, he's 34. He's had runs at the title before, and I don't really see one again in his future. So I think he's more on the downtrend, and Johnny Walker has still got a little bit of life after those 2 wins. So I'm going to go with Johnny Walker, and probably a first-round finish. I mean, if Anthony Smith gets caught with a couple big ones, I could see him just being like, yeah, I'm gonna take this one out, So I'll take him. What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of like Johnny Walker got like a second lease on life here. He started out his UFC career with a decision win, and then I guess he was on the Contender Series with the decision win, and then rattled off 3 knockout wins. But from there, knocked out by Corey Anderson, and then went 1-3 in his next 4 fights. Went to SBG Ireland under John Kavanagh and just kind of revamped his career. And now he's on this 2-fight win streak, both by finish against tough guys. I mean, Ion Kutalaba, we all know he's dangerous. He can also get finished early, and he ended up getting a submission win there, which is impressive. But then he fights Paul Craig, and I mean, I was all over first round KO in that one. I mean, you could just see the writing on the wall. Like he wasn't going to mess around in Paul's guard, and he got that quick knockout there too. Anthony Smith, if you look at his record, he's beaten guys like Ryan Spann, which is a great win, but Jimmy Crute, Devin Clark, and older Gustafson. So he's not really beaten any of these young up and coming studs, and he's losing to guys like Alexander Rakic, Magomed Ankalaev, and even Glover Teixeira. So he's fighting higher competition, but he's losing to these guys that have some youth on him and that have, they're maybe a little bit faster, maybe hit a little bit harder than some of these other guys he's beaten. So yeah, man, I'm kind of on Johnny Walker's side here too. I think he's got more to fight for, like you kind of alluded to. Johnny Walker also, if he finishes Anthony Smith in spectacular fashion, with how, I guess lacking this 205 division is, he's right in line for a title shot within the next fight or so. If he beats Anthony Smith and fights one more time and gets another win, he's probably looking at a title shot, which is insane. That just shows you how, 205 isn't that deep at all. But yeah, I think he's got more to fight for. I think he's been working on his game, rounding out all the holes. You hope he doesn't get clipped by a guy like Anthony Smith, but I see him being too fast on the feet and so long too. It's going to be hard for Anthony Smith to get in tight on him to land those big shots. Yeah, and Walker's dangerous everywhere, so I see him get the win too. I like that these odds are pretty close. I think you're going to find some good value on Johnny Walker.
Yeah, and Anthony Smith weighed in as the backup for Glover versus Jamal Hill, but he missed weight. So I'm not gonna sit here and like say that he's not committed or anything, because I actually do like Anthony Smith, which a lot of people don't. I don't really get why. I mean, the guy's the lion heart, man. He goes in there to fight and he puts on good performances, good shows, but I mean, as a bettor, like you got to take that into account in some fashion. Be like, well, he missed weight as a backup for the title fight. So I mean, you gotta think about that a little bit. At least I do. So I'm gonna go with Johnny Walker in this one.
Yep. Yeah. And last thing too is Anthony Smith. If you remember in his last fight, that leg was torn up. I mean, he thought
Yeah,
he broke his leg against Magomed Ankalaev.
that's true.
Didn't end up having a break or anything, but he could. I mean, every time he was putting weight on it, he was just kind of folding. So yeah, something to think about too.
Daniel Rodriguez and Ian Machado Garry minus 262 for Garry, plus 262 for Rodriguez. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 142 for the over, plus 142 for the under. The undefeated Ian Garry stepping in here against D-Rod. 36 years old for D-Rod, 11 years older than Garry, who's 25, 6'3" for Garry, but they come in with the same reach. I'm interested to see what you got to say on this one.
I think I think Daniel Rodriguez is being a tad bit disrespected on the betting lines because he has fought better competition. He's been around longer and he's, pretty tough and strikes really well. Ian Garry is obviously super talented, but he is young, and this is a huge jump in competition for him, in my opinion. He fought Song Kinan in his last fight, found that late finish, but wasn't really getting a whole lot going up until that flurry in the third round that he put him out with, and he got caught in that first round to where it looked like the lights shut off for a split second. He kind of woke back up when he hit the floor. So if you're on the Daniel Rodriguez side, that's what you're praying for. But Ian Garry is fast, man. He throws everything straight down the pipe, which is, super technical. And sometimes that volume too will get to guys. I really liked his his volume against Gabe Green. Gabe Green's as tough as they come and was trying to get in his face, and he just stayed composed and patient, which is hard to do like for these younger fighters. Sometimes they get in those firefights, and that's when they end up getting knocked out. But he kept everything tight. He stayed composed, and he ended up getting through a tough Gabe Green. But Daniel Rodriguez, man, even though you might think he lost to Li Jingliang, and I did think he lost, but Lee, I mean, I don't know. Can you even say Ian Garry's better than Li Jingliang with how long Lee's been around, how many good fighters he's fought, and how many good fighters he's beaten? I mean, Ian Garry is obviously talented, but he's still a tad bit unproven to me, just because he hasn't fought these higher level guys yet. Daniel Rodriguez is going to be a hell of a test for him. If he gets through him, then then you can start putting that hype behind Ian Garry a little bit more if you're the UFC. That's a tall task, and I just can't believe he's that big of a favorite against the guy like Daniel Rodriguez. And I'm having a hard time picking against Garry, but those odds are looking pretty juicy.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I don't think it's any secret that I'm not like huge on Ian Garry. I mean, I mean, he's only 25. He's got a lot of room to grow, but I think he knows that too. Like he knows he has a lot that he needs to improve on. But he's looked pretty good in his UFC fights, but not the greatest competition. And honestly, for like the amount of hype that he's been getting, like I would expect more from him. And
Right.
as a better, like you gotta look at that and be like, all right, this guy's getting a lot of hype. He's coming in here at minus 250. Like people see the name Ian Garry, he's a younger guy, and they're like, damn, yeah, he's gonna win 11-0. They know him. But then D Rod, people know D Rod too, and they might look at that price and be like, oh, plus 250, that's pretty good. So it kind of goes both ways. But the how I look at this fight stylistically is like both guys are volume kings. Like they just go out there and throw volumes. Neither of them are like big power punchers. Both of them both of them land over 6.75 strikes per minute. D Rod's at 7.42. So D Rod's got the slight edge in volume. And I look at this fight like neither guy is probably gonna go to the ground.
Yeah.
Unless maybe Garry would take it there to maybe show like some improvements, or he just doesn't really like the matchup on the feet, but I don't think he will. So it's probably a stand-up fight. And D-Rod's got the slightly better volume. 3-round fight plus 250. Like, I think that's the play. Like, I don't think I could go to the judges' scorecards at minus 252 with Ian Garry against D-Rod, who is going to be throwing a shit ton of volume. And this fight is favored to go the distance. So they're basically saying this fight's going to go to decision. Ian Garry at minus 252, there's no fucking way I'm betting that. I'm sorry. There's no way. Because I just think I need to see more from him. And I saw a video today of him basically saying he wants like 6 or 7 more fights before he gets a title shot. I'm like, I don't really know. I mean, I get like you want to get the experience, but what does that tell me as a bettor? Like, okay, you're not that confident in yourself. You want to get the experience before you get there. Like, I get that for a fighter's perspective, but for a bettor's perspective, that doesn't really get me fired up. So I'm gonna go with D-Rod's the value play. Like, I'm gonna take him for the pick too. Like, I don't care. The only thing that scares me is that he's 36, but he's been pretty active as of recently, and he's coming off a loss, so he probably wants to get back in the win column. So I'll take him. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to stick with him too. And, you know, Daniel Rodriguez is tough too. So Ian Gary's going to have a tough time putting him down. But I called last week's parlay buster with Jessica Andrade getting beat. And this is an exact same situation. Like this could be the biggest parlay buster of the week just because the UFC has marketed this kid, the next Conor McGregor. People hear Ian Garry, they see the Irish accent, and they eat that stuff up. So a lot of people might have Ian Garry in their parlays. They see he's minus 250. Well, a guy like that can't lose as a minus 250 favorite. Let's throw him in the parlay. And then all of a sudden, D-Rod comes along and gives him a long ass night. So, yeah, man, if you're betting on this fight, you can't take Ian Garry at minus 250, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm going to pick D-Rod too. I think D-Rod, that experience and toughness, he's just going to be there for 3 rounds, and we'll see if Ian Garry can take it.
Yeah, Ian Gary's a good kid, but if this goes to decision and it's 29-28, either way, like Ian Garry was never the play. Minus 250 is like, I don't know what the odds are off the top of my head, but that's like 75%. This is like more closer to 50, 55, 45, maybe 60-40 type of fight. So all the values on D-Rod.
Agreed.
Light heavyweight bout here. Carlos Ulberg coming in at minus 370. Ihor Potieria plus 370. Over under 1.5 rounds. Plus 124 for the over. Minus 124 for the under. Carlos Ulberg on a bit of a win streak here. Had a couple of good performances, good couple knockouts against Nicolay Negomarianu and Tafon Chukwe. Obviously training out of CKB, City Kickboxing, with Israel Adesanya. He was a kickboxer before he went into the UFC, or at least before he fought on the Contender Series for Ihor Potieria, the man that took out Shogun Hua. And I gotta say, he put him out in some pretty impressive fashion. But is it really that impressive? I mean, Shogun was, what was he, like 42, 43 years old? And I was like, yeah, I mean, he was like a minus 200 favorite against Shogun. And I think most people were like, should be a little bit higher than that. And he's coming in here. His only loss in the UFC is to Nicolay Negomarianu, who Carlos Ulberg knocked out in the first round. So that might explain the price. But light heavyweights is a little tough to like get behind that big of a price. And I think both guys are decent. I'd like to see a little bit more from Ulberg to get behind a minus 370 price. I do think he wins, and he probably knocks him out in the first or the second round. But I can't say I'm like too confident in it. I mean, I wouldn't like put him at lock status. You know what I'm saying? Like light heavyweights, not the highest level yet. Like Ulberg's got a good ceiling, but minus 370 is a little tough. Maybe look for like a knockout prop or something. What do you think?
Yeah, all I know is these two are going to be swinging. Carlos Ulberg, though, he's looked good, and he comes from obviously City Kickboxing with a bunch of other savages. But yeah, I look at Negomarianu, and Ulberg knocked him out pretty quick in that first round. And that was also Ihor Potiere's debut fight last summer. And Ihor Potiera was the slight favorite coming into that one. And you almost got the sense that maybe he wasn't ready for this level quite yet. And I don't think he's made the adjustments in this short amount of time to deal with a guy like Carlos Ulberg, who's, in shape like no other. He's big, 6'4", 77-inch reach, and that striking is slick. He's knocking guys out. Like, I don't know how many times Mariano's been knocked out, but I don't think it's that many. That was probably at least his first knockout in the UFC. Yeah, it was. So he's finding the chins of tough guys and he's putting them down. And Potiera, I mean, you go from getting Nicolai in that first debut fight and losing, and then they give you Shogun Hua in Brazil for a retirement fight, a fight Shogun is going to retire, and he's over the age of 40. I mean, that was written all over the wall that Potiera is just going to knock him out real quick, and that's going to be the end of Shogun's career. I still don't know why the UFC did that to him, but yeah, I just don't know if Potiera is quite there yet. He hasn't shown us anything that says he is. I mean, he's lost to a guy that he was favored to beat, and then he beat a guy who was 42 years old. So Ulberg definitely should win. The price tag is, can't be. I wouldn't be holding the minus 370 ticket if my life depended on it. But yeah, I think he should win. I think this is, a violent fight. If you are on Ulberg's side, maybe look at that knockout prop as the week goes on. But that's about it. I think he takes care of Potiera, though.
Yeah, I'm going to take him as well, probably by knockout. Welterweight bout here. Tim Means coming in at plus 208. Alex Morono minus 208. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 151 for the over, plus 151 for the under. Tim Means coming in here off the loss to Max Griffin, which was, not a terrible fight, lost by split decision, and then a loss to Kevin Holland, and then 3 wins in a row. So he was on a little bit of a streak. Kevin Holland put a stop to that, and then Max Griffin capitalized on it. Morono damn near got a win against Santiago Ponzinibbio on short notice. That would have been his 5th win in a row. And he was definitely winning that fight and then got knocked out in the 3rd round. But I think this is a pretty solid play for Alex Morono. The only thing is, like, Tim Means is pretty durable, and he can match you on the feet. Like, he can match with your volume on the feet. But I think Morono should be able to get this one done. And he should be able to put a good amount of strikes up on him too. What do you think?
No, I feel the same way. Morono, with a full camp, or at least longer than, super short notice right off the couch, is a good fighter. I really do think he's a good fighter. He's got deceiving power. Like, he doesn't look like he hits hard, and when he's throwing shots, he doesn't look like he holds a lot of power, but he hurts guys. I mean, he should have beat Ponzinibbio. If he didn't get caught in that third round, he would have won. But
Mhm.
again, I think he just got a little tired, didn't have a full camp, and you can kind of attribute that loss to that. But Tim Means, good fighter, been in the UFC forever, man. I think dating back, yeah, it's been 11 years now. 2012 is when he made his debut. So, ton of experience, but I don't think that's going to matter against a guy like Morono, who owns a gym, who coaches, who's good on the ground too. I mean, he's got sick jujitsu. He just never really has to use it, but he does find submission wins, and Tim Means gets submitted a decent amount. I don't see the fight going that way though. I think this thing plays out on the feet. I think Morono doesn't have a problem finding the chin. Uh, Tim Means at this point though, I just don't see him having the power to knock Morono out like Ponzinibbio did. I can't remember the last time Tim Means had a knockout. It's probably, yeah, 5 years ago against Ricky Rainey. So, I mean, I don't see him coming in here and beating Alex Morono on the feet. Minus 200, maybe not a bad parlay piece. But again, on the money line, still a little bit too wide for me to lay the chalk on that. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Morono. I just think he's solid, more solid all the way around. Probably less damage and wear and tear on him than Tim Means has. And I think he could probably get this thing done by finish, whether it's knockout or submission. Maybe a club and sub.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Morono too. I think in Means' last fight, he looked a little bit slower. Like it looked like you could tell the age was catching up to him a little bit against Max Griffin, and he just didn't look like he was on that level. But with that being said, this fight is probably going to go to decision too. Both guys are fairly durable. Neither guy has big knockout power. So, I mean, if you're holding the plus money on Tim Means, it's not like a terrible look. But I do think Morono should get the win here. And unless the judges screw him over, I think you should probably get it by decision. So
Yeah.
I'll take him. Welterweight bout here. Another couple of, or not a couple, but Matt Brown plus 190. Court McGee minus 190. Couple of older guys coming in here. 38 years old for McGee. 42 years old for Matt Brown, over under 2.5 rounds, minus 160 for the over, plus 160 for the under. Both guys 2-3 in their last 5, and a plethora of experience. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, it's kind of tough to pick a side here because both guys are older, and that kind of might offset itself a little bit. And Court McGee coming off of that devastating knockout loss to Jeremiah Wells, but up until that point, Court McGee had been pretty damn durable throughout his career in the UFC. I mean, it's not like he was getting chinned by a bunch of people and getting put down all the time. But Jeremiah Wells just has exceptional power, and taking that knockout loss, I don't know if I'm quite ready to say that Court McGee's chin is gone or lacking or anything. And Matt Brown, the immortal, he fought like it against Diego Lima and then lost to Brian Barberena by split decision. So, I mean, he was in that fight. So, Court McGee, though, I do think is going to have the slight advantage on the ground if it gets there. And I do see it kind of going there at some point. I think Court McGee will probably be the busier fighter, too. And on the ground, McGee can sink in a submission, too. He's pretty slick on the ground. Matt Brown, I all last week looking at this card when I was going through it, I wanted to get to him and I kept watching his past fights, but you go to the records, man, he's got so many losses lately just to a couple of wins. Whereas Court McGee, hold on, let me pull it back up. I exited out on exit. Court McGee had two fight win streak before that Jeremiah Wells fight, and they gave him this young, hungry kid. So I don't know, man. Watching these two side by side, it just feels like Court McGee might have a little bit left in the tank. I'm going to rock with him on Saturday, but definitely not a fight I'm confident to lay my money on by any means, because I feel like in this fight too, you're going to see one of these guys maybe lose a step since the last time they've been out, just because they both are right around that 40-year-old mark. So if I have to pick a guy, I'm going to go Court McGee, but probably won't be laying any money on it.
Yeah, I think it's probably dog or pass. Like if I'm looking at this two older guys, McGee comes in at minus 190 against Matt Brown, who neither guy has really been winning that much like recently. I mean, McGee had a 2-fight win streak there, and then Gets knocked out by Jeremiah Wells, but Jeremiah Wells is like, he's got some Terminator power. If he
Yeah,
hit,
he's a freak.
he is an absolute freak with the power and the strength. So I don't put too much stock into that loss because I think he definitely should have lost that fight. But just looking at the stats, and McGee's a little bit lands a little bit more than Matt Brown. Pretty similar, like across the board, though. So I think it's more closer to like a 50-50. I think it's kind of dog or pass in this spot. I know Matt Brown lost a split decision his last time out. I was at that fight, and I thought for sure Matt Brown won just with all the takedowns that he got on Brian Barberina in Columbus. I thought for sure he would get the nod by the judges, but he lost the split decision. 42 years old, though, it's like, I don't know how much confidence you can really have, but I do think it's closer to 50-50. So I'm going to say dog or pass for the sake of the show. I think Court McGee wins, but if I'm going to bet on it, I don't think I could get behind, minus 200 on Court McGee in this spot.
Yeah.
Heavyweight bout here that was supposed to happen a month ago back at UFC 287. Carl Williams versus Chase Sherman. Sherman coming in at plus 382, minus 382 for Carl Williams. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 124 for the over, minus 124 for the under. Carl Williams coming in here off of the big win against Lucas Dresky, which he looks like a big athlete in that one. And I got to say, I think it's a terrible matchup for Chase Sherman, but it seems like this price is a little bit hefty. I'm not going to lie. I mean, back in April when they were supposed to fight, I was on Carl Williams, but the more I think about it, I'm like, I don't want to pay minus 300 something, like close to minus 400 on a low level heavyweight fight, even if it is a bad matchup, because who's to say Carl Williams doesn't go in there, land a couple takedowns, Chase Sherman survives, and then he gasses out, and Chase Sherman, starts to take over, which that's what low level heavyweights turns into. Two guys that, if one of them gasses, the other guy's just always got to do is lay on top of you and start giving some ground and pound. But Carl Williams did go 3 rounds with Lucas Dresky and had the cardio advantage in that one. So I think he wins this fight probably within the distance, unless he gasses himself in the first round and just can't find the finish and has to lay on him. But the guy is explosive, and he's got some really sick takedowns. He'll pick you up and slam you. He just got to worry about that cardio, because he could easily win this fight just by holding on to him and using his strength and his wrestling and just win a 3-round decision. But if he wants to go for the finish early, he's got to beware of gassing himself out, and Chase Sherman could take over late. But I'll take Carl Williams for the sake of the show. And I don't know about a prop because it really just depends how he fights. What do you think?
Yeah, no, if Chase Sherman, normally Chase, it seems like in the fights he wins, he comes on later. He gets kind of builds and gets better as the fights go on with the striking. But in this one, I think he's got to get to him early, and he's got to put a pace on him early and try to just take some of that energy out of him. Because if you look at a lot of Chase's losses, they have one thing in common. It's that he's getting taken down. And once he gets taken down, guys beat him. Whether it's Jake Collier by submission, by rear naked choke, Alexander Romanov submitted him after taking him down 3 times. And a handful of other guys have been able to get him to the ground too. So if you're Carl Williams, he probably knows that. He knows his game plan is always the wrestle too. So I don't think anything changes here with that. I think he looks to get it to the ground. And if he gets Chase to the ground, it's either going to be a decision or probably a knockout, because you don't see really many submissions by Carl Williams. But man, that price, it's hard to get over that price and looking at it, especially against a guy like Williams who hasn't really fought, um, a striker like Chase Sherman. Yeah, Chase Sherman's got a ton of losses in the UFC, has a hard time buying a win every now and then. But at the end of the day, he does have a lot of volume for a heavyweight. And he hits decently hard, and he puts together really good combinations. So I don't know if Williams has seen a fighter quite like that, but I don't even know if he's going to see it Saturday, because he could just get a takedown immediately and control the whole round or fight, or find some kind of TKO finish. So as far as the price goes, I don't even think it's worth a shot at this point playing Chase Sherman. The pick's going to be Carl Williams. Too wide for me to even play it on the betting line. But yeah, man, I think Carl Williams, that athleticism and strength is just going to be too much, and he'll get it to the ground with ease.
Yeah, I agree. Bantamweight bout here. Pretty good fight. Cody Stamann minus 145. Douglas Silva de Andrade plus 145. Over under 2.5 rounds. Minus 188 for the over. Plus 188 for the under. I got to say, I'm pretty excited for this one. I think it's going to be all action. And I mean, whenever Douglas Silva de Andrade goes in there, you just look at the guy. I mean, he's like 5'7", just shredded to the gills, got like veins popping out everywhere. Cody Stamann, pretty jacked dude as well, 5'6", and not a lot of fat on him. We'll just say that. So a couple of guys that are juiced up, not literally, but juiced up looking, and kind of match up interestingly. But I'm kind of torn on which side to take because it seems kind of like a 50-50, and I want to lean the dog, but what do you think?
Yeah, it does. It does seem like a 50-50 fight, but I'm slightly leaning towards Cody Stamann for a couple of reasons. One, De Andrade is almost 40 years old. I mean, he's going to be 40 in a year and a half to a year. Um, and in his last fight against Saeed Nurmagomedov, yeah, Saeed's a beast, but he was outstruck pretty easily in that fight, and even got a takedown landed on him. I guess he got one as well against Saeed, but against Sergey Morozov, he early was getting taken down and kind of beaten up, and then came on later and found that finish. But um, against Cody Stamann, who I know you didn't like his last performance against Luan Lacerda, and maybe Luan, as a big underdog, had a few chances to make that fight really close. But he is super fast on the feet with the striking, and his wrestling is pretty damn good as well. So when you look at the stats side by side, Cody Stamann lands 4.47 significant strikes per minute, which is pretty good, and he lands 2.47 takedowns. To De Andrade's 3.61 significant strikes per minute, but De Andrade gets hit with over 4 per minute as well. So that tells me that Cody Stamann's going to find the chin while this thing's on the feet, and only a 69% takedown defense for De Andrade against the guy in Stamann who hasn't really had much problem getting guys to the mat. So those two things mixed together makes me want to lean towards Stamann here a little more confidently. But obviously, De Andrade has the power. He's got the good submission game as well. We saw that against Morozov. But all the signs, I don't even want to say youth because Cody Stamann is, 34 or so. But Cody Stamann just seems like a fresher fighter at this point to me. I think he's faster. I think he's stronger. And everywhere this fight goes, Cody Stamann's going to have some game. So, yeah, man, I got to stick with him right now.
Yeah, maybe it's me thinking back to when De Andrade cast a ticket against Sergey Morozov for me. He's always going to have a good place in my heart for coming back in that fight and cashing my ticket there as an underdog. But yeah, the loss to Saeed, he didn't look great, even though Saeed is probably a much cleaner striker than Andrade is. Andrade is kind of a wild, looking for the knockout, just I don't want to say like a marauder. Like he's not gonna pick his shots. And Saeed just kind of was more accurate, a little bit more active as well. But like you kind of said, I didn't like Cody Stamann's last performance, even though he won 29-28 on all the judges' scorecards. He won the first 2 rounds and then just kind of took the last round off. Like one of those rounds was pretty close, and I think he was like minus 300 something. I think that it was the first round that was close, and I was like, dang, it could be 1-1 going into the third. And Cody was like running. Like he thought he banked the first 2 rounds and then he was just running, which it worked out for him. He won. He did win the first 2 rounds, but you know how these judges are. I'm like, I don't really trust this. Like, bro, you gotta go and try to win the third round too.
Yeah.
So I didn't really like that. I also thought he could have mixed in the wrestling a little bit more, and he just didn't even like really try. I mean, he only shot 2 takedowns, didn't land a single one. because that's really where he's gonna thrive. Like that's kind of his base, and it seems like he's fallen in love with the hands a little bit. Because he did look sharp with the hands, but I'm like, I don't really want to bet on your hands, bro. Like I want to
Right.
bet on your wrestling ability and what you can do overall. And it didn't really look like he was interested in wrestling at all. So maybe he was, scared of the jujitsu of Lacerda or for some reason. He did knock out Eddie Wineland in his performance before that. So another reason why he might be falling in love with the hands. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this is probably closer to a 50-50. I actually kind of like the under plus it's at plus 188, under 2.5. Like both guys have finishing ability, and with Andrade being, close to 40 years old, definitely could be looking to not take as much damage in there, but Cody Stamann's been subbed twice before. Andrade, he's been finished before as well. He's been TKO'd in the second round. He's been subbed in the second round as well. So I mean, both guys have been finished. Both guys have good finishing ability. Andrade is going to bring it in there, smaller cage, more action. So yeah, I think it's closer to 50-50. Just to be a contrarian, I'll take Douglas Silva Andrade. That can be our little grudge match from last week when I beat you with the Alaskarov. So I'll take the dog this week instead.
I think if you're betting Stamann, last thing I'll say, if you're betting Stamann, I think you're praying for a boring fight. Honestly, you're just
Yeah,
praying he takes him down and controls him. Which, people hate boring fights unless you're holding that ticket. Then you love it. So
agreed. Lightweight bout, which was also rescheduled. Natan Levy sitting at minus 245. Pete Rodriguez sitting at plus 245. Over under 1.5 rounds. Over is at minus 124. Under is at plus 124. We talked about this one. What was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago?
yeah,
And we were somewhat on the same page. I mean, Natan Levy's gonna have the grappling advantage, the takedown advantage from what we know. P. Rodriguez coming down from welterweight. So, maybe he's a little bit bigger in there, and Natan Levy can't get the takedowns, or he's going to have a lot of trouble with that. But on the feet, Pete Rodriguez looks solid on the feet. We haven't seen a ton of them. I mean, his debut was Jack Della Maddalena. He got knocked out in the first round, but that was Della Maddalena's debut as well. And not many people knew that he was going to be that good. So, that loss ages well, and then his only win in the UFC is Mike Jackson, who was the photographer type guy. So, yeah, this is it's a greasy one, man, because we don't really know what we're really getting with Pete Rodriguez, and I'm not really the biggest Natan Levy believer because he's looked like he's very beatable in his fights against Genaro Valdez, who's not terrible, but nothing special. And Mike Breeden, who's not terrible, but nothing special. Run of the mill lightweights. He hasn't looked like dominant. He's looked solid, but not like dominant. At minus 250, I don't know how to feel about it. Pete Rodriguez, I believe, was the one that had to push this fight back because he was having trouble with weight. So maybe look and see how he looks on the scales. But for the sake of the show, I'm going to go with Natan Levy because we kind of know what we're getting with him, and it should probably be enough to win. So what do you think?
I'm gonna take a shot on the dog here. I'm just not super impressed with Natan Levy. I mean, I know he's got a good ground game. He averages a lot of takedowns, and I think a lot of that came from his last two fights with Mike Breeden and Genaro Valdez because he hit 6 against Valdez and 9 against Breeden. But you look at Pete Rodriguez coming down from welterweight. If he still holds that power, he's going to be super dangerous against Natan Levy. I don't think Natan Levy on the feet is anything to write home about at all. Um, he doesn't get. I mean, his striking defense is decent right now, but he's not fighting guys like Pete Rodriguez who are just going to throw caution to the wind, come forward and try to put your lights out. Pete Rodriguez obviously lost to Jack D, but I mean, we know now that Della Maddalena is a savage. So, and in that fight, Jack Della Maddalena used his jab phenomenally and flawlessly and that gave Pete Rodriguez a ton of problem. But I don't see Natan Levy having that type of game where he's going to have the jab working and keeping Pete Rodriguez at bay. Maybe Pete's stronger than him coming down. I know Natan Levy's pretty well put together and is a strong dude, but if Pete can come in there and stuff a few takedowns and keep it on the feet, man, I think he's live for a knockout here, and I think he's a live dog this week for sure. I'm going to rock with him. I think he's one of these fighters that just might surprise us come fight time. We know he's tough, and we know he's, kind of a junkyard dog, has that style. So maybe that's the type of style that gives Natan Levy problems. So I'm going to rock with him this week.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Maybe look for a Pete Rodriguez knockout prop and get a little bit more juice on there. Flyweight bout here. This one was also rescheduled. It was supposed to happen back in February, and we're getting it here in May. So Yeon Kim coming in at -180. Mandy Bohm coming in at +180. Battle of the T-shirts. Over under 2.5 rounds. -325 for the over. +325 for the under. 1-4 in her last 5 for Yeon Kim. It's been a bit of a rough stretch for her. Coming in here against Mandy Bohm, who I don't think has won a single round in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. So, too. Yeah, 0-2. She had a ton of canceled bouts. Kind of same with Yeon Kim. So, both girls that, just can't seem to get a break as far as the wins and losses go and as far as the canceled bouts go. So, this is real high-level women's MMA, flyweights. I'm going to just go with Yeon Kim and close my eyes, but man, this is literally women's MMA, and who the fuck knows? I mean, Mandy Bohm, they're very similar on the feet. I'd say Yeon Kim has a little bit more volume. Mandy Bohm is a little bit more, mixes it up a little more with like the kicks and tries to use her length a little bit, but neither chick really gives me any confidence betting in her. So maybe you just take the dog and close your eyes. But for the sake of the show, I'm going to take Yeon Kim. She actually has, a win in the UFC, so I'm going to take her. What do you think?
Yeah, no, yeah, usually on these type of fights, you almost want to be holding the underdog ticket for women's MMA, but I don't think so here. I mean, Yeon Kim lost her last 4 fights, but I mean, she fought Priscilla Cachoeira, who, is a savage on the feet and knocks a lot of girls out. She was able to survive to decision with her. Didn't even get knocked down in the fight. Split decision against Jocelyn Edwards. So she's at least as good as Lucy Pudilova, and loses to Molly McCann via decision and Alexa Grasso via decision. She survived against Alexa Grasso, and Valentina Shevchenko did not. So, yeah, man, I think Yeon Kim's high level. No, I'm just kidding. But but I do think she's going to be the better striker here. Yeah.
Better than Valentina.
That's right. She survived. Valentina did not. So, MMA math for you. But Mandy Bohm, 2 losses in the UFC, was taken down a few times by Victoria Leonardo and just, hasn't looked good. Like you alluded to, hasn't won a round in the UFC. But to be fair, in her debut, they gave her Ariana Lipski, who is a decent fighter, at least, to make your debut against. But she's also getting, that strike differential is bad. She lands 2.93 and gets hit with 4.20. And Yeon Kim is at least a decent striker who lands some good volume, nearly 6 per minute. She lands significant strike wise. So you look at that, and I think there could be a big gap on the feet here. So yeah, I'm going to rock with Yeon Kim for this one. But this is a bathroom break fight. This is when this thing comes on, you go do what you got to do before the next one gets up.
I don't know, man. I might be throwing big money on Yeon Kim. I'm kidding. Don't do that. Welterweight bout. Gabe Green sitting at -130. Brian Battle +130. Over under 2.5 rounds. -160 for the over. +160 for the under. Brian Battle coming in here since he's moved down to welterweight. Looks like he's in great shape, man. Even looking at him on Instagram, he looks like he's in good shape. Pause. His last time out, he lost to Rinat Fakhretdinov. He just got taken down and mauled, and it looks like Rinat Fakhretdinov could be a force to be reckoned with that ground game and that pace and that pressure on the ground. So I can't really. I don't expect Gabe Green to come in here and do that. I think this is probably going to be a stand-up battle unless Brian Battle takes it to the ground. But Gabe Green is there to be hit. If you look at the stats, he gets hit nearly 7 strikes absorbed per minute. And a lot of that is due to the Ian Garry fight and the D-Rod fight, two guys that we talked about earlier, and two guys that have a lot of volume, push a lot of volume, and Gabe Green got hit by that volume. So he's there to be hit. He's like a pressure fighter. He just wants to stand in your face and use that cardio because he's got great cardio and he wants to push the pace. If you're Brian Battle, I would probably look to mix in some takedowns because if you let Gabe Green sit in your face and you don't like get him off you or get him off of his game plan, he can kind of like drown you a little bit. And he got cracked by Johan Lioness. But then after that, just like kind of broke him down and was like hit him a couple times. Johan went to the ground and decided to get out of there. So this is somewhat of a 50-50 fight. Honestly, don't hate the price tag. I'm Gabe Green at minus 130. I think Brian Battle's also going to be, he trains in North Carolina. So, I mean, it's kind of like a home game for him. Dog money on a home game fighter in a near 50-50 fight. I don't hate it. But I do think Gabe Green wins this. What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of a tough call because I don't put too much stock in Brian Battle's last loss because Gabe Green's not going to come out there and take you down 7 times and control you for 14 minutes of the fight. So Brian Battle's going to be able to, use his actual skill set in this fight. The one thing, though, I do think on Brian Battle's side is that he is young enough and that he's going to be constantly getting better after each fight at this point in his career. He came off the Ultimate Fighter, got some wins in the UFC, and he is athletic and he's got some sharp skills. You can tell. I mean, that knockout against Takashi Sato in that first round was devastating with that kick. I mean, I know Sato's been knocked out a few times before, but before that, Brian Battle's beaten Trayshawn Gore, which is a decent fighter. But Gabe Green, the one thing I could see Battle struggling with is that volume because, like you said, man, Gabe Green puts it on guys. He stays in guys' face. He doesn't go away. I mean, we saw it against Ian Garry. Ian Garry at a few times was, kind of struggling with that pace a little bit. Not so much struggling with the power, getting hit, but struggling to find his own offense. Just because, I mean, Gabe will eat shots too. I don't want to say he's, incapable of being knocked out because he definitely is, but he's also not really getting chinned too many times by guys. I know he got knocked down by Garry, but other than that, I mean, he's not really, put himself in a ton of danger besides that fight and for a second against Johan Lioness, but came back to get the KO himself in the second round there. So yeah, it's super interesting though. If Brian Battle can just land that jab and keep Gabe off him at times, I think it's a close fight, but I kind of lean your direction too right now with the Gabe Green side just due to that volume. I think it's going to look better than the judges on Saturday.
I like it. Bantamweight bout here, the curtain jerker. Jessica Rose Clark back in action, coming in at minus 110 against Tainara Lisboa, the debuting fighter at plus 110. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 170 for the over, plus 170 or the under. One thing that jumped off the board to me, I was like, Jessica Rose Clark is 35. Like, what? Maybe I've just been off the ball, but like I didn't realize she was that old. And Lisboa coming in here at 32 years old, making her debut, is like interesting. But then you look at her history, and she's Muay Thai champion. She's been in the fight game for a long time. She was mainly Muay Thai, and then just recently in she had her first MMA fight in 2016. She lost to Norma Dumont. Got submitted in the first round there, and then comes back in 2019, and it looks like she's been in the MMA world since then. So she's making her debut here, 5-2. She's gonna have what I would think be the advantage on the feet. She actually has a decision loss to Valentina Shevchenko in a Muay Thai bout back in 2020, and I watched that fight, and Valentina was like just taking her down in the first round. Like she took her down back to back to back to back to back, like 5 or 6 times in a row. Like you can't really take girls down in Muay Thai. Like you can do like the trips, but Valentina was literally just ragdolling her to the ground. They would stand him up, and then she would do the same thing over and over again. And she ultimately lost to Valentina, but it was an interesting fight to watch, to say the least, because it's 13 years ago. So it's crazy to see how far that Valentina has come, and how long that Lisboa has been in the fight game. So she's got a lot of experience, and coming in here as the underdog, I honestly don't hate the price, because JRC hasn't really been doing so hot in the UFC, to say the least. If she wants to win this fight, I think she's got to take her to the ground, and that's kind of been her motto. Like in her past couple fights, she had the win over Jocelyn Edwards. She got 5 takedowns, unanimous decision win there, and then goes up against Stephanie Egger. Probably, I mean, unless you're the Russian Ronda, you probably don't want to take Stephanie Egger down. And she gets armbarred by Stephanie Egger, and then fights Stolyarenko, who's the armbar queen, and gets armbarred by her, gets her arm snapped too. So I'm not like really looking to bet JRC. 35 years old. Look at her record. She doesn't really have that many wins. She's 11-8. And you got Tinara Lisboa coming in here, UFC debut, probably a little bit more hungry. I like the dog money on the debuter. She's going to have the advantage on the feet. At least I think so. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the dog too. The one thing that does concern me is that I watched the Norma Dumont fight with Lisboa, and Lisboa, man, on the feet, like you can tell she's a world champion. Um, she can strike her ass off. She was snapping the head back of Norma, but right when it got taken down, it was over. I mean, she didn't. You could tell she didn't have much of a ground game at all, and that's what concerns me. Is because Jessica Rose Clark. I mean, she's taken girls down in the UFC before. It makes me think she can do it here too, but she can also get caught on the feet. And Lisboa hits probably harder than your average girl in this weight division in the UFC. If I'm being honest, and she is. I look at her record, Jessica Rose Clark's. She's not really. Everybody she's losing to is kind of a submission artist, like Stolyarenko, Stephanie Edgar. She's not really getting knocked out or knocked down by anybody. So yeah, man, I think it all comes down to who can implement their game plan at the end of the day. If Jessica Rose Clark can get it to the ground, I think it could be over. And if Lisboa can just learn to stuff some takedowns, if she's been getting better since Norma Dumont at that, on the feet, it's going to be a long night for Jessica Rose Clark. But I don't know how you put too much confidence in JRC at this point, if I'm being honest. Um, yeah, man, I think it's his dog or pass here. Not confidently, maybe a small play, which is Lisboa right now. But you just never know what you're going to get when these two styles clash at this level.
I mean, I got to read off Jessica Rose Clark's wins in the UFC. She's got 4 wins. First one, Beck Rawlings, 8-9 MMA, pro MMA career. So not even 500. Paige Van Zant, 8-5. Definitely not fighting anymore, if you know what I mean. Sarah Alpar, 9-6 in a pro MMA record. And then Jocelyn Edwards, who's 13-4. But if you take her down, like she ain't really getting back up. So, and then she did that. That's how she won that fight. I think Pani Kianzad is like a pretty good stand-up fighter, and Jessica Rose Clark, when she stands with girls, she's gonna lose to the Muay Thai fighter. But this is women's MMA, and who the hell knows? Maybe she goes out there and just starches her, because this is the low-level bantamweight fight for women's MMA. That's what it is.
I could see this one getting I could see this one ending inside the distance, if I'm being honest, whether by submission, by JRC, or KO by Lisboa. I mean, I don't know. Interesting bad fight.
Yeah, gonna have to get real creative with it. But those are the 12 fights for UFC Charlotte. If you want to get our premium bets, link is down in the description. And if you want to place any bets, go to betopenly.com, because you're gonna get the best price, as we just showed you throughout the show. Those are the best prices you're ever gonna see, and most bets will get filled by Saturday. Other than that, we will look to get in the win column once again. Got any thoughts going into UFC Charlotte other than what we talked about?
Just got to forget last week. Play some good bets. Be on the right side. I don't know. It's a bounce back week. We're gonna make some money this weekend.
I got a good feeling about it. I think
I do too.
these aren't these are some solid fights and a lot of lines that aren't like completely unplayable. There is a couple in there, but it's like I think there's good enough value and some solid props opportunities as well. But we will see. And you next time you see us will be in the UFC Charlotte recap. Thank you guys for the support at the Double Leg on the social medias. If you're watching here on YouTube, drop a subscription and a like down below. At HeyJob Picks on the medias for me. Where can they find you?
TikTok at the Parlay, Twitter and Instagram the Parlay_media, and YouTube the Parlay MMA.
All right, till next time, the Double Leg signing out.